Classic line of the day. Right before I say record, Craig goes, "Let's get on with it." And here we are. So thank you guys for participating. And let's just start off right out of the gate. What is your thoughts with Venezuela? And who wants to go first, Craig or Gary?
Greg, you jump in, please.
All right. I think the Venezuela thing dates back to Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez completed the nationalization of Venezuelan oil, which had begun before his time. But he completed the nationalization and took the oil out of our hands, the foreign hands that it was in. And he also proceeded with other nationalizations. Hugo Chavez said that he represented the peasants of Venezuela and not the bankers of New York City. And this, of course, caused a huge animosity toward him and toward Venezuela for electing him. And so the assault was began on him and all the usual claims and all of that. And he wasn't in any way deterred. And he really did an unpardonable offense when he mocked the United States at the General Assembly of the UN in New York. In his speech, he walked up to the podium and he said, yesterday, at this very podium where I stand, stood Satan himself speaking as if he owned the world. You can still smell the sulfur. He was talking about President George W. Bush, who had addressed the UN, I guess, touting our hegemony over the world. Well, no one had ever gone to such extremes to mock the United States, and that just about signed the death warrant for him. So when the failure to remove him failed, and he died of cancer, Maduro took his place, and Maduro didn't back off the program of representing the peasants and not the foreign interests. Most South American governments, Latin American governments, I think, are accustomed to accommodating Washington and represent enough of Washington and foreign interests to survive and still try to represent, to some extent, the interest of the people. They don't seem to do a very good job at that latter part. So what this is about is getting back to oil, dealing with upstart Venezuela, which has been in defiance of the United States control over South America, and also breaking up any kind of alliance between Russia and Venezuela, because Putin has stated that there's a growing strategic relationship between Russia and Venezuela, and that Russia supports Venezuela in its opposition to being exploited. And so here is Trump enforcing the Monroe Doctrine against Russian presence in Venezuela, because Russian warships have been in the Venezuelan port, and some people have claimed that the Russians are providing defensive means for Ukraine to resist an American attack. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I do know that Putin has come out in support of Maduro and Venezuela against the United States. And so here is Trump asserting the Monroe Doctrine, as he does or did in his 28 points that he came up with as part of the solution to the conflict in Ukraine. So that's my explanation of it. It's the combination of those factors.
This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike. Gary?
Yeah, Craig's right on the mark with all of that. Let me add a few things. First of all, I do not believe Trump is going to send ground troops into Venezuela. I think that is, it's being thrown out there. Trump uses strategies like that to move things, but it's a quagmire there. In fact, Maduro said yesterday, and it was published this morning, and he said these things in English, which was interesting. But he said, "No more Vietnam," and that's what we would have if we dared to follow through with some of these threats we're hearing. And I think a lot of Americans are afraid that Trump's going to send our kids in there. He's not. That's just his boistering, and that's how he negotiates. We've all seen that for years now. But Maduro also said, no more Iraq, no more Afghanistan, no more Iran. And these are all places where American policy was to grab the oil, the reserves in these countries. And so Maduro made some good points, because this really is about capturing the resources that are down there, I think, is the primary reason. They discovered an oil field with billions of barrels of oil in the ground on the border of Venezuela and the country next to it, and Guyana. This border dispute was settled many, many years ago, but it's been a friction point. Now they've discovered this massive oil reserve in that area. So Venezuela is threatening Guyana with capturing it, and of course Trump and the industrialists supporting, they're lusting after that access to the oil as well. In fact, Guyana did a contract with Texaco to explore it. So this huge pool of oil is an incentive for us to get involved down there. Not to mention the oil that's in Venezuela that these people lust after. And so many wars have been based on not just resources, but oil specifically. So this really is about that. The other comment I would make is that our Navy firing missiles at these small boats is unacceptable. Obama fired missiles into weddings and killed a lot of innocent people. He bragged about it. He had a meeting every Tuesday where he decided who was going to die. I mean, that is a horrible representation of our country on the world stage. So Trump having the Navy kill these fishermen, or these people, these little boats don't go from Venezuela to the United States, and in fact, if they're carrying drugs at all, they go to Trinidad, and those drugs are transported to Europe, not to the U.S. Via Trinidad. But and then they double tapped that boat the other day. People were in the water waving their hands, and they fired another missile to kill them. That should not be how we operate as a nation. It is terribly immoral. So I think Trump's making a very big mistake there. And yeah, there is the drug issue, but Venezuela does not produce a great deal of narcotics. That's primarily Colombia and even Ecuador. So Venezuela is really not the drug problem that is being portrayed. It's really about the oil. I don't think Trump's going to send our kids in there. And one last thing, which is interesting, and Craig and I have had a little bit of a debate about this. The software that was utilized by Dominion and, or at least by the other one,
Smartmatic.
Smartmatic, yeah, was allegedly developed in Venezuela and then utilized from Venezuela to influence elections, not just in the U.S. but all over the world, and that was by design. A lot of people have been talking about this. It's a really fascinating story. That may be one of the motivations for Trump to get Maduro out of power. And interestingly, Maduro had a phone call with Trump. Now, we don't know the facts, but allegedly Maduro wanted to take with him, if he were to leave Venezuela, a significant amount of wealth. I think it was $200 million. Might have been even a little bit more than that. And take his family, probably go to Iran. And they couldn't agree on looked like on an amount Maduro might leave with. But just the fact that Maduro might consider leaving, to save his life, by the way, if he had enough wealth to satisfy him, is also an interesting facet of this thing. So those are my thoughts on the Venezuela situation, which is pretty important right now. This is the top of the news, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there regarding what's going on.
If I can add to that, what are your guys' thoughts then on Cuba's role in all this? And I say this because I've had other people on that have referenced that, Cuba might not allow Maduro to leave. And I, being naive, didn't realize that Cuba still had some type of stake in this or power over Maduro. Craig, what are your thoughts?
I think it's just all bullshit. No truth to any of that. The only reason Maduro would leave Venezuela, it wouldn't be fear of us. It would be uncertainty about his own military as to whether the United States would succeed in bribing his own military to depose him. That would be the only reason he would leave. I think he's committed to the country, and if he wasn't, he would have given in to the United States long ago, and so would have Chavez. So I think they actually are real in the sense they have a commitment to Venezuela. So my own opinion is that most of these stories are planted in a way to undermine Maduro. They come either out of the White House or the CIA or the State Department or whoever is working with Trump to try to destabilize the regime. And I think Putin knows that, which is why I think yesterday he made a very strong statement in support of Venezuela. And I also do not believe the story of Venezuela using the voting machines to influence elections. I think this is kind of like the stuff we said about Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein and Assad and bin Laden. It's all a bullshit story to set them up and to get Americans all upset about them. And so I don't trust any news story about Venezuela because we know we don't have a media. We have a brothel of whores who tell lies for money and serve masters. And so any story coming out of them is useless. You can discount it the minute they issue it. And so I think that it's just a simple matter. That's always been the case. You know, General Smedley Butler told us all about it back in the 30s. He said, he was the commander of the United States Marine Corps. He said, the U.S. Marines and I, we are the protectors of the assets that the United Fruit Company and the New York banks have stolen from Venezuela. He says, we're the enforcement mechanism for the looting of South American countries. That's what he said. This was the commander of the Marine Corps. You should read his statements, and you should read his short statement, War is a Racket. And this is the most dedicated, most decorated Marine in American history. He's won every medal. He twice got the top medal. There were people in the United States planning a coup at one time, and they wanted him to be the person they would install as ruler. He, of course, turned them down, but he was a highly admired and recognized person. Congress looked at it, toward him with the utmost favor. So I think that's just what we're seeing. It's just a continuation. Anytime any Latin American country got out of the loop with us, we overthrew them. Just think of all the number of times we've overthrown Guatemala. Think of the decades-long war against Nicaragua. It goes all the way back to the conservatives in the Reagan administration. The demonization of the Nicaraguan government, the alleged commies, and the effort to overthrow them militarily and the pressure on them ever since. It's endless. You get out, any of those countries that gets out of sorts with Washington, they overthrow them. And I think that's just what we're seeing with Venezuela. Yeah, they've been out of sorts with the United States before Chavez. I don't remember the whole story, but the renationalization of Venezuelan assets began prior to Chavez, and he saw it through, and Maduro has stood by it. And so these people are, they have to be moved out of the way. And so I think that's what it's really about together, as I said. The Russians have had success in penetrating South America via Venezuela. Their warships are received at Venezuelan ports, and they have negotiations with China and Russia, and relationships are developing, not just economic, but as Putin said yesterday, strong strategic relationships. So it could be here Putin is using Venezuela the way we use NATO on Russia's borders. He said, okay, you guys bother me, I'm going to bother you. And of course, if the Russians were to provide these anti-ship missiles and the S-400 air defense system, the United States would lose the conflict. Every ship would be blown out of the water, the airplanes would be blown out of the sky. It would be a massive demonstration of American military impotence. The U.S. defeated by Venezuela. So I don't know if Putin would go that far, but he might. He seems to be willing now to be more aggressive than in the past, because I think he's sort of given up hopes that he can work out things with the West. And when those hopes pass, he's unleashed. And no, I don't think anyone in their right mind wants to deal with Russian military powers if it's unleashed. So that's my take on it. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think Trump is going to do anything. The real question is whether the United States succeeds in bribing the military in Ukraine so that Maduro feels unstable. And if he figures that the American money is worth more to the generals than any loyalty they have to the country, and any other promises that may be made them as to who rules and so on, and that's what will move him. That's what would cause him to leave. And where he would go, I don't know. I suspect not Iran. I suspect it would be Russia. And I suspect if it was a real situation, the Russians would go in to get him and get him out. It would be a demonstration that helps them in the propaganda war to which they don't pay enough attention. So that's all. That's my take on it. Of course, I may be wrong about all of this. I'm quite prepared to be wrong about every bit of it, but I think that's what it is. It's consistent with our past behavior for the entirety of the 20th century. And of course, in the 21st century, Israel got us focused on the Middle East, and we didn't pay all that much attention to South America, and some of them managed to get off the leash a little bit. I think we want them back on the leash, but it may well be that American power is not what it used to be.
Cuba, in your eyes, then plays no part in any of this?
What's that?
Cuba doesn't play any part in any of this?
Whose part?
Cuba. Does Cuba play a role?
No, that's just part of the propaganda. You know, we still hate Cuba, and it's part of the. I think Cuba is more likely to be overthrown.
Hey, Michael, let me jump in a little bit. There is another aspect of this. Maduro's training before getting into the position he was a bus driver. This is not somebody that's sophisticated or educated. he's just brutal, which is the number one requirement for people in leadership in these types of countries. And as Craig said, General Smedley Butler book is a must read. It's not a very long book either. And by the way, he won 2 Medals of Honor. Just an amazing man. And he explains that war's a racket, and particularly, he was in the Philippines and in Central and South America. And you remember the United Fruit scandal, where they overthrew the government. Even right now, we're sending millions of our tax dollars to Nicaragua, supporting gay and lesbian activities in that country. History sometimes more than rhymes. They have a strategy of controlling our hemisphere that includes assassination. Our government, our CIA, has assassinated so many leaders in South and Central America that it's become a strategy. And so I think Maduro has one other thing on his mind, and that is he could be eliminated by us at any moment. So that's got to be on his mind as well. I think that's on Trump's mind to a degree. Trump's at risk right now of these these powers that be. They tried to kill him twice. And let's face it, if they want to kill you, they're going to be able to do it. It's a little harder if you're the president of the United States or you're president of Venezuela, but that's got to be on his mind. But I think Craig's right. This was just the strategy that's been in operation for over 100 years. They want to control the resources down there, and sometimes having a socialist or a communist in power is a very useful tool for our foreign policy, because these people have a lot more control over the environment. And I don't think people in the American foreign policy care about the welfare of the individuals that are suffering under people like Saddam Hussein or Venezuela. It's all about the resources. And then one last thing is that not only does Russia have a lot of presence in Venezuela, but China does as well. And I think Trump is moving away from globalism, where the United States is overexposed. We can no longer support our troops in 100 plus countries. And so Trump's consolidating American power back into our hemisphere is the Monroe Doctrine. And I think that's consistent. So he's now less focused on Ukraine and back focused on our hemisphere, which he thinks he can manage and is more important. And he needs to get China and Russia out of our hemisphere. I do a lot of work in Peru, and China has tremendous inroads in Peru and really every South American country.
Panama too, right, Gary? Panama, don't they have a big presence in Panama?
Yeah, I'm. You and I are friends with Michael Young, who has shown us, the new Chinese bridges over the Panama Canal system, and we're down there now trying to extract China from controlling the Panama Canal. Big thing that's going on, right? So, and if we're going to have influence, we ought to choose a level of influence, a scan of influence that actually makes some sense. Now, I don't believe killing people arbitrarily is good American policy, but focusing on the geography that's closest to us is a bite we could chew. So I think that's appropriate. One thing I wanted to
No, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to change topics.
So was I. So was I. Probably going to the same place. But here, I was going to segue into, because I know we wanted to take some time to talk about the divide that's going on right now. Is that where you're going?
We can go there. That's a good. I had another.
Oh, go ahead. You first. You're the guest. You first. Where do you want to
go? Okay. Mike Lindell. I had dinner with him Friday night, and he announced last night that he's running for governor of Minnesota against this horrible government there. They're so bad. It's you got to laugh at it, right? So Mike's making a run for it, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get Trump's endorsement. And apparently, people all over the country are funding him. I've traveled with Mike quite a bit, and he is. We'll walk into a crowd of people, and everybody starts chanting his name. I mean, he's a hero. And by the way, we talked about election fraud, which he's sacrificed his fortune. He was worth $100 million when he got involved with challenging the electoral integrity. He told me at dinner that he's now worth a negative 20 million. Poor guy. But you know what? He's got just millions of fans. And I think he's got a really good chance at becoming the next governor of Minnesota. And he is committed, unflappable. I mean, this guy could really make things happen there, and maybe even save that state if one man, even if he's a top executive, is possible. He's likely to do that. Craig, do you have any opinion on my buddy Mike?
I don't think that people in Minnesota have enough intelligence to elect him.
He told me that, and this is fascinating, he is actually polling among the Somalis at 85%. And he said it's because of their values. They want order to some extent. They want, their values as Muslims, which are, some degree of order and some degree of integrity. But anyway, he's polling at 85% with the Somalis, which I thought was fascinating.
I couldn't explain that. Or as I can tell, the Somalis are pretty much in control in Minneapolis, and not sure what their values are. But if you look at their representatives in Congress, you have a hard time associating them with Mike Lindell. Anyhow, I wish him luck, and I hope I'm wrong, and that the people in Minnesota see the opportunity he's giving, and that they act on it. But I just don't see that kind of intelligence in the state. If you look at everything the government does, and this fellow they have as governor, and you look at the way they conducted the trial of Derek Chauvin, it just looks like the people are lost to America. I don't see how you got people who would elect a governor like Waltz could possibly go for Mike Lindell.
The majority of the population in Minnesota are Northern European, Swedish, Norwegian, and they tend to be liberal. But what's happening in this country is that intelligent people that have leaned liberal have had a giant wake-up call. And I think the majority of people in Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis, they've realized that their state is a laughing stock, that it's bankrupt, it's corrupt. I think that maybe there's going to be a massive change in opinion, because these people have suffered enough, they've seen enough corruption, and they just might come to their senses. I wouldn't say that about a lot of population groups, but about Northern Europeans. Of course, you look at Sweden and what a hellhole that place has become. But even Sweden is starting to wake up now. You know, people are only teachable when they suffer sufficiently. And I think the Minnesotans have had enough suffering that they might come to their senses. Now, do you think they're going to kick Ilhan Omar out of Congress now that it's pretty well established that she married her brother? Again, you have to laugh at this stuff. You know, they had a kind of a pictorial of her brother, and he's about as gay looking as any man I've ever seen. And everybody up there really knew it was a fake marriage. But now it's being investigated. Homeland Security's looking at it. Wouldn't it be neat if they not only threw her out of Congress, but threw her out of this country for the immigration violation that it appears she's committed?
Yeah, Gary's way more optimistic than I am right now with all this, because I just can't see at this point people. Look, Craig wrote an article this morning talking about Minnesota and all the fraud, and how these programs are just they implement them, and the grift, suck as much money as they can out of them, and like all these cities to a larger scale. I mean, Craig, you were talking about, I'm paraphrasing your article, but you know how New York is a bigger problem than Minneapolis with all this fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's almost impossible today to hold a person of color accountable. And any kind of action in Minnesota that looked like it was against a protected group, such as illegals, I don't think the Democrats are capable of it, and I don't think the Republicans are either. I think they have immunity. If they didn't have immunity, they wouldn't be here. We've got millions of them here, which is already a demonstration that they have immunity. Look at the fierce efforts in all the blue states to prevent any deportation. So, and the blue states, they're elected by people. I think that there have been enough generations of white ethnicities raised in guilt, institutionalized in them through their education, that they're very hesitant to take any action against a disadvantaged minority, or whatever you want to call them. So I think that we should never give up hope. And the great thing I admire about my friend Gary Heavin is that he's a hopeful person. And I think that comes from his relationship with God. But and I admire it, and we don't ever want to lose it. But I'm a very realistic person in my approach, and not that I am devoid of hope, but if you just look at the guilt that's been infused in all white ethnicities, they've permitted themselves to be overrun. They permit the disadvantaged not to be held accountable. We've had a lot of these stabbings recently. Are criminals released by liberal judges who have been committing terrible crimes. They have a long record of terrible crimes, and the judges just release them. And they go and stab somebody else. And so there's an unwillingness. And I think it's because the white people are so infused with guilt. They're so accustomed to being demonized and marginalized There's a spate of articles that have come out recently about what's happened to young American boys. They're so marginalized, they can't function.
And they're angry.
And well, I don't think they are angry. I think they accept it. They retreat to the basement. And um, so, look how successful the Israelis have been in branding anybody who criticizes anything they do, even genocide, as an anti-Israel, anti-Jew, somebody who wants to do the Jews in because we don't approve. If you don't approve of genocide, it means you hate Jews.
Anti-Semitic.
Well, and this is accepted. Nobody stands up and says, "What is this bullshit? What are you talking about? You mean I can criticize Russians and Chinese and Americans and Germans and French and everybody in the world, but I can't say anything about Israel?" Where did they get this special right? It's a special right. Well, this is what people of color have. There's no willingness. If you in my article this morning you referred to, Mike, I report what alleged members of the Minnesota Social Services Network say. They say all the fraud got out of hand because Governor Walz was afraid that if he moved against it, it would look like he was moving against people of color, and the left wing would come out and demonize him and destroy him. And so it's not that he accepted the fraud, but he was prevented from doing anything about it from the fear it would look like he was moving against the programs for the disadvantaged, and that this would be unacceptable, and he couldn't risk looking that. So that illustrates the constraints that I'm trying to talk about that are on the white ethnicities. They have to accept things because the risk to them of trying to combat it is enormous. So these people weren't approving of Governor Walz, but they were simply saying he wouldn't act. They said, we knew about the fraud, he knew about it, but he couldn't act because these programs are allegedly for the disadvantaged. And if you act against a program for the disadvantaged, it looks like you're acting against the disadvantaged. And so he did nothing. And that's how it got out of hand into this massive scandal. Well, that makes sense to me. I see it all the time. I see it everywhere. I see this everywhere. We had in New York this Letitia James, the Attorney General that I think George Soros' money put in office. I think that's the claim. She destroyed VDARE. VDARE was the only immigration site in the country. It was a long established site, held conferences. It was not a racist site. It was simply trying to understand and deal with the problems of massive immigration, the massive influx of people who don't assimilate. They no longer need to because they come in such numbers. They exist in their own communities. If you got 80,000 Somalis in Minnesota, what do they need to assimilate for? They got their own community. And we see it, we've seen this for a long time with the Hispanics. In fact, we are assimilating to them. You can't call anybody that you don't have to listen to it in Spanish. So we are being assimilated to the Spanish communities. Their language now is equivalent to English. You can't call any service provider, you can't call your bank or doctor's office, you can't call anybody that you don't get the recording that repeats in Spanish what it tells you in English. So they're not assimilating to us, they're not adopting our language, but we are adopting theirs. We're being assimilated to them. And these kinds of problems is what BDARE was looking at. And so what happened, this Letitia James, without ever bringing a charge, no charge was ever brought. What was brought was endless demands for information on all donors, every donor, information, constant demands that exhausted their funds. So they had to close. And now she's trying to bring a civil case against the founders of VDARE on the basis that they might have used the foundation's resources in some personal way. Well, you really can't operate a foundation without using the resources. So she can, if that's her grounds, so you see, well, how did that happen? Nobody protested it. Letitia James is black. You can't say anything about her. The Justice Department can't even get her prosecuted for lying on her mortgage application that her rental property in Virginia was her place of residence. She made the lie to save thousands of dollars in mortgage costs. Obviously, she doesn't live in Virginia. She's the Attorney General in New York. Everybody knows this. And a federal Democrat judge dismissed all charges on the grounds that the prosecutor was not legitimately appointed. In other words, a false claim. So there's no accountability. And this is the great weakness. That's why the West can't defend itself from internal enemies. And it's why the conservatives pretend all the enemies are in Iran or Russia or China or Venezuela or Cuba. That's where the enemies are, because they don't dare look home because they're scared to death and can't do anything about it and wouldn't dare try. Just as Governor Walz wouldn't do anything about the fraud that he knew about, because it would come back to bite him. And that is the real situation. This is the realistic description of the situation in the United States. Now, VDARE never did anything except try to deal realistically with the consequences of mass immigration. It no longer exists because a black woman decided that it was racist to even discuss such questions and destroy them. And nobody came down on her, no bar associations, no law schools, no judges say, what are you doing? It's not the function of Attorney General of New York. What are you doing? Nobody asked. Nobody. And now the Department of Justice can't even find a prosecutor because they're all Democrats willing to prosecute her. And the same for James Comey. He's off the hook too, for the same reason. So, this is the real weakness of the country. It's an extreme weakness, and it's true of all of Europe. I want to remind you that Trump's recent national security strategy that he released speaks of civilizational erasure of Europe. In 18 years, Europe will not be recognizable. That's what he says. It's true. My friends in Europe tell me, don't come back. You won't recognize the place. It'll break your heart. And they're telling me that now, not 18 years in the future. It says, don't come now. You cannot recognize the place. So these are the real issues, not drug trafficking in Venezuela or Russian invasion of Ukraine, Iranian nukes, or Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, or bin Laden, and Assad, Gaddafi. All of this is totally false. And it captures the mind and destroys any realization of what's going on and any ability to deal with it. It simply doesn't exist. I have a hard time being confident about the American people when I read the comment sections of websites and podcasts. The utter total stupidity and the utter total mendacity of the commentators is mind-blowing. You say, are these people representative of Americans? If so, what the hell am I bothered to write for? They ain't got enough sense to exist. Just go read these comment sections. You're looking at a lower life form than a moron. And people with no ethics, no integrity. This wild assertions of denunciations, and they all end up screaming at each other. They eventually all start on the commentator or the writer, and they pick him apart and with every kind of false slur imaginable, and then they start on each other. Well, that's America. Well, what the hell? How are you going to get anything out of that? You can't even get a serious discussion out of these people. They're immune to it. It's all them having fun, calling people names.
Well, that's a segue to, wanted to catch this last topic. I know we're going to go a little bit over if that's okay, but the divide in this country right now amongst MAGA, and you're seeing it in real time. And yeah. I have some thoughts on it. I don't know if you guys, your thoughts are more important than mine in that regard, but because I've been following. Well, I've
had my say, so now you and Gary take over. I've had my say. Have anything else to say? I think that my say now it's y'all's time.
Let me start off, Gary, if I can, and then you tell me if you agree or disagree, and then add your thoughts. But the divide right now, to me, one of the things that I was always observing, and I haven't been paying attention to this stuff for that long, in all fairness, but it came across to me that people were more interested in being at Mar-a-Lago and getting access to the parties and the events versus being objective. And I think we're seeing that right now since Trump came back into office. Under Biden, it was don't trust the government, don't trust the government, don't trust the government. Under Trump is I don't trust the government, but I know these people mentality. These are my friends. So now we're supposed to trust the government. And the recent events, and not to spend too much time talking about the Charlie Kirk, but people are asking questions. I thought that's what people were supposed to do. I thought, and I'm not a journalist. I've said this many a times. I get attacked for things. I am not a journalist. I just have people on that are very intelligent that talk to me. So, but I see these people in the briefing room. Now in the Pentagon, I don't see any objectivity. I see people that don't want to lose access to Mar-a-Lago. And then it proves my point because they put this stuff on social media that they're together. I mean, even just the last couple of nights at the White House for Christmas. And you're going to be upset. And then you're going to turn around and blame Candace Owens while you lose the midterm. That's what I'm seeing right now. Candace Owens is going to be the reason that the Republicans lose the midterms. I've seen that from some very big media heads.
And Tucker.
And Tucker. Tim Pool is one of them. Candace Owens, Candace Owens, Candace Owens.
Yeah.
I don't believe any of that. Like, most people don't pay attention to Candace Owens. Yes, there's 1 million that watch her show. I have not watched a lot of that going on with her. But most people don't. I'm going to go on a limb here and be a subject. They don't care about that.
Well, first of all, I had to go take an antidepressant and get some tissue after Mr. Sunshine spoke for 10 minutes. Greg, you need to get outside this weekend.
Go get him, Gary. Go pick him up. Go get him. Go get the plane and go get Craig and take him to lunch.
Yeah. So before I respond, let me try to shine some sunshine into this. Okay. So the feds announced yesterday that in these 10 or so months, we have had 2.5 million illegal aliens depart from this country. 600,000 of them were caught and forcibly deported. But 1.9 million of them took advantage of the offer to turn themselves in, get a free flight home, and have the ability to apply for citizenship later. So, now 2.5 million people, when there's 20 to 30 million illegals in this country, maybe a small number, but my gosh, that's we've never seen that happen. Not to mention the lowest reported border crossings in the history of the country is going on right now. And then you had all the vaccine stuff happen this week, where they eliminated the Hep B vax from the schedule as a required thing. Amazing. That was such a stupid vaccine, dangerous to give to a child day one of their birth, when they wouldn't need it till they're exposed to drug use or sex, and it didn't even last that long. It was just a horrible decision. It's now been modified, and then the CDC changes position on vaccines association with autism. That there is no evidence that it doesn't affect. We've had a good week. And now we are so far in the hole, I agree. But, pendulums swing. And I believe that it swung so far to the left that people are now finding the courage to speak out. Craig was talking about the governor of Minnesota being afraid of the word of racism, racist. You know what? I'm thinking people just don't give a shit anymore. They're telling the truth. They don't care what happens. And that brings us to Candace Owens and Tucker and your opinion on it. And by the way, I've been invited to Mar-a-Lago multiple times. Never had an interest in going. My close friend Ramiro Pena is in the White House right now with Trump. He prayed with him yesterday, sent me a picture of it, and he spoke at the big Christmas event that they're having there, sent me a bunch of pictures. So he's right there in the middle of it, kind of giving me some feedback on it. And yeah, there's a lot of people that want to be affiliated with the Trump Association. I'm actually friends with a lot of them. And that's exciting and so forth. And for people that are interested in that sort of thing, and I'm not. But I think the big issue right now, and this is what I wanted to talk with you about, is the Great Divide. Throughout history, divide and conquer has always been a military strategy. And so we have this MAGA movement, which was united, which got Trump into office, that has got Kennedy into position as the in a place to get control of our broken medical model. Those are amazing things that we've seen accomplished. So the left saw an opportunity. It started with Candace Owens. Actually, it started with Tucker. When Tucker interviewed my friend Thomas Massey, and Thomas said that AIPAC, the Jewish organization, had assigned a babysitter to every congressman, and that he didn't need one. Boy, that started this kind of this great awakening of the inordinate influence that Israel has on America. Not just American politicians, Ted Cruz being an interesting example, but on our media, the establishment media, on Big Pharma, on George Soros funding these district attorneys that fail to prosecute crimes, and so many things. Well, anyway, we've opened this discussion about America first, and that really needs to be our new slogan right now: America first, not Israel first, not any other nation first. America first. And if we don't get that right, we're going to continue to suffer under the influence of our so-called greatest ally, which does not have our interests at heart. So Tucker started the conversation, and then Candace picked up on it. She realized that when Charlie Kirk was murdered, and obviously there's a really good example that aligns with what Craig was talking about. You don't have to be a ballistics expert to know that wound on Charlie Kirk's neck did not occur from a .30-06 rifle, and that they captured this person so quickly. But they filmed him running on the roof, but where's the film of him actually firing the shot? So they're gonna have a problem prosecuting this guy because the ballistics don't match. They failed to capture him in a prone position, making the shot when their cameras are everywhere. And then all of these other odd things, they've just failed to investigate. I had dinner scheduled with Kash Patel 2 weeks ago. I was really looking forward to it. I didn't know if I could bring this subject up, but I was going to sure try to do it. He canceled at the last minute. But it sure looks like the FBI is compromised. They're not properly, well, they're certainly not asking the right questions on Charlie Kirk's assassination. Well, Candace noticed that that the Zionists had means, motive, and opportunity. And I won't go into all that, but she began to discuss the Zionist influence on so many things in our country. And of course, they started yelling anti-Semitism towards her. And those of us that are thinking people, we need to stand against terms like anti-Semitism. I'm an American. I live in a country where we have freedom of speech. And when I see Israel killing children by the tens of thousands, I'm going to call it genocide. Now, that's not anti-Semitic. That's just being being a realist. And as a Christian, and as somebody that's been given the ability to reason, I'm going to call things as I see it. All the people out there, most of your audience needs to be comfortable doing the same thing. Now, I'm fortunate because I don't have a job. Nobody can fire me. I have been sued by the Soros people for things I've said on air, but I've had the money to afford the best attorneys. They call that FU money, by the way, and I've spent some of it to support my freedom of speech. But those of us that can speak out, we need to have the courage to do it. It's not anti-Semitic to say, hey, that is genocide. We as Americans need to not support it. We need to not send our money there. And, even Trump has ordered colleges to expel their foreign students that simply say, hey, this isn't right, it's genocide. And he calls them anti-Semitic. He joins in it. Ted Cruz is worse than any of them on it. You know what? I'm going to call bullshit when people say I'm anti-Semitic because I think killing children by the tens of thousands is wrong. Okay, it is wrong. Okay, it ain't anti-Semitic. It's just wrong. And the same thing on racism. You know, these Somalis that have come from a country that they're actually, and this isn't my opinion. This was published right after this thing came out by a professor who is Somali himself at a major U.S. institution. Explained that they come from a country where it is acculturated to steal from the government anything you possibly can. So they brought that culture over to Minneapolis, and to talk about that rationally, and to call me a racist is bullshit. We need to demand our freedom to speak, and we need to exercise it. And anybody that challenges by calling us names, we need to tell them bullshit. We're going to say, and you know, that's what you're doing with the guest you have on. You're bringing people on that have the courage and the intelligence to state the obvious, right? So right now, the left is using this Candace Owen anti-Semitism as a divide and conquer strategy. So we're going into the midterms, and you have certainly half of the Republicans that are Christian Zionists who believe in the doctrine that if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. They believe in that it's you've got to honor anything Israel does or you'll be cursed, right? Then you have the other people who are saying, look, Israel's committing genocide, and that's not something as a Christian I'm going to support. You know, where's Jesus in killing tens of thousands of kids? And so Candace Owens is in the middle of this talking about it. Tucker's in the middle of this talking about it. And now you've got this war between Trump and really most all of the Republican establishment. And then a bunch of people over here with Candace and Tucker who are saying, yeah, you know what? They may be right. And the problem with that is that divide and conquer is going to cost us the midterms. And the left knows this. They are pushing this. And so what is the solution for us that want good government to come back, to continue to progress as it started right now under MAGA and MAHA, Make America Healthy Again? How do we continue that when we have this divide in the midst of us? That's the great question. I don't really like my answer, but I can't think of a better answer. But we need to agree to disagree on the Zionist issue. We can't have that battle right now. We need to stand down on it. We need to all focus on one thing, and it's make America first. And get through this. You know, we all don't have to agree on everything. And in fact, if we all agreed, Michael, if you and I agreed on everything, one of us would be unnecessary. You know, so getting caught up on the anti-Semitic question right now, we need to set it aside. We'll wrestle with it later. In the meantime, it's America first. We've got to get our people into office that have some degree of integrity and accountability. You know, and I'm involved, for example, here in Texas. And I had dinner also with Ken Paxton, the current Attorney General. He's my good friend. And he's running against John Cornyn for the U.S. Senate seat from Texas. And he's kicking his ass, by the way. Cornyn has been in office for 20 years. He's a doormat. He's an establishment Republican who has done nothing in that position. And he's been in the number 2 position in the Senate for many of those years. And all we've gotten is crappy government, more of the same. And so Ken Paxton, who has been, they tried to impeach him. I mean, anybody that tries to get impeached is over the target, right? So I'm involved with putting people up there that are America first, that are constitutional first. Ken Paxton has sued the federal government over 100 times, more than any state attorney general in the history of the country. There's the man we need in Washington. Not more of the same through these establishment Republicans, particularly the ones that are bought and paid for by AIPAC. So we got to agree to disagree on the anti-Semitic issue, and focus on America first, or we're going to lose the House. We're going to lose the House and the Senate, and guess what? They're going to impeach Trump. And nothing. And one last point. I forget where I read this yesterday, but over the last since George H.W. Bush, through all the presidencies up to now, at this point in their presidency, the 1 year point, the average number of bills that have been passed was 200. Trump has had Congress pass 5 legislative acts in this year. Where in the world is the Congress to try to codify into law these gains we've made in constitutionality and freedom? These people are missing in action. Can you imagine that? 5 bills have been passed in his first year compared to 200 in all the other presidencies.
Craig.
Well,
Craig.
I will say two brief things, if I may. What I noticed from Gary is that it looks like there's a good chance that the final price we will pay for serving Israel will be our destruction. The Trump presidency will be broken up and the whole thing will come to an end, because Israel will end up being more important than America. That is clearly a danger that Gary has identified. The other thing I would say is I agree with everything Gary said of the enormous improvements we have made in social and other policies. He's absolutely correct. But none of those touch my point. My point is the self-confidence of all white ethnicities has been very, very damaged, if not destroyed. And none of these changes in social policies that Gary correctly enumerated, all of which are achievements, affects the basic problem, and that is the loss of the belief system in Western civilizational values among all white ethnicities. In fact, the destruction of the belief system is institutionalized in the entire educational establishment of the Western world. And if you don't have a belief system, you can't have grounds for making America first. You have to believe in America to make it first. But that's not a belief that the educational system anywhere in the West perpetrates. It's not part of the enculturation process. The enculturation process is to destroy your belief in Western civilization, racist, colonialist, exploitative. That problem remains unaddressed, and it remains unknown. It's an unknown problem, and it's unaddressed, and it continues to destroy us. So even though we have improvements and health policies and such as that, we don't have anything restoring our self-confidence and our self-belief such that we're willing to do the things like make America first. That's it for me. And you two continue. Well, I would like to ask both of you, you've talked about Candace and Tucker, heroes. There was some interview I didn't watch and don't know about it. Apparently between Tucker and somebody named, is it Fuentes?
Oh, Nick Fuentes.
How you say it?
Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, now what was that? Now he's somehow in the news, and he's the new lightning rod getting struck as a racist and white supremacist and anti-Semitic. And what is all that about? Or does it have anything to do with what we're talking about?
He's 28 now. He's been around since he was 18. I've been following him for a few years, 2 or 3 now, I think. But where I first heard of him, he was with Kanye West when they had that dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Remember when Kanye West had dinner with Trump at Mar-a-Lago and it set off a whole firestorm 3 or 4 years ago? Well,
Yeah.
he was with him. Gary, you remember that?
Yeah.
And then they went on Tim Pool and Kanye West stormed off. Fuentes was with him there. But his thing is America first, and he's been very, very critical of Israel. He was banned. He couldn't have a channel on YouTube. He had been debanked. He was at January 6th, although he was not arrested at January 6th. He was the one on the megaphone saying, paraphrasing here, did he say we need to storm the Capitol? Now I'm second guessing myself, but he was at January 6th. Because people question him, why wasn't he arrested? Because there's some say he's an FBI informant, plant, whatnot. But he couldn't get on any mainstream shows. He couldn't get on YouTube. He has his shows on Rumble. And now all of a sudden, he's doing big platforms. Patrick Bet-David, Candace Owens, Tucker. It appears that him and Tucker had been gone back and forth for a long time. He wasn't allowed to go to any Turning Point events. He showed up at one in Michigan and they kicked him out. But he represents the Groypers, the young white males that feel that they've been, I don't know if the word's cheated, but they feel that they're losing out on America, that they're second fiddle. So it adds to what we
Took
talked
him a
about.
long time to realize that.
But,
It's been going on since 1965.
well, it's interesting though. Now he's able to. He can't create his own channel on YouTube, but his interviews are up there. I mean, his conversation with Tucker is up there, and it's good. I mean, it's really good. And since he was on Candace and Tucker, he's battling with them again online, both of them. But people like him.
So we have 3 people speaking for us. Okay.
Where can people find you, Craig?
Just my website, paulcraigroberts.org.
Gary?
Gary at garyhaven.com.
One last thing I want to add. Craig, you and I we've spoken now a number of times, but a year ago we talked about how the goal was the demoralization, right? That Trump would get back in office and things wouldn't appear to be, things aren't being delivered according to promises, and that would demoralize people for the next election. Do you feel like that's succeeding so far?
No, I think Gary has pointed out successes. They haven't been able to block Trump everywhere. And so I call that a superficial level as compared to the level I've been talking about on this show. But that's the level the public responds to. And so I think on the superficial level, there have been accomplishments, and that this will limit the ability to demoralize Trump supporters. But if they're able to produce a whole number of catastrophes just before the vote, yeah, it could cause people to give up. And that's why I think Gary's so important. He points out all the reasons we don't need to give up. We're making progress, and we're getting rid of that horrible vaccine policy. It's a general policy that has produced all these new lifelong illnesses that begin at childhood, and all of the things he said. These are all important. So I think the demoralization, for that to happen, there'll have to be some substantial setbacks for Trump, or some substantial blow up within his support base. And as Gary said, we can avoid that just by taking the attitude that we have to unite behind America being first. It's not clear to me that the Israeli First people can do that. And it's not clear to me that Trump would be damaged because he's aligned with Israel. So the more likely harm will fall on Tucker and his two other spokespersons, Candace Tucker and the fellow I asked you about. They may bear the brunt, but there's no sign of Trump repudiating Israel or Netanyahu, so he should be safe from charges that he's not serving God's purpose by protecting the Jews.
Guys, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for always willing to come on, and I look forward to, sure won't be that long before we talk again in 26.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
Mic drop.